The wind on Wraitha 9 was never gentle. It howled over the black stone ridges, carrying fine dust that stung the eyes and coated every surface. The sky was the color of faded steel, and distant lightning forked across the horizon. Elias Ward stood, on the edge of a rocky slope, looking down at the thin trail of smoke rising from his shuttle. The ion storm had come without warning, one sharp flash, then a deep rumble that had rattled his bones. By the time he reached the controls, half the systems were gone. Now the shuttle was grounded, and Wraitha 9 was the last place he wanted to be stuck. He adjusted the strap of his gear bag and started walking. Somewhere out there, he needed to find metal, wiring, anything that could be used for repairs. The scanners were down, so it was just his eyes and instincts. Wraitha 9 was not empty. The planet had settlements, but they were far apart, built into stone cliffs or hidden in deep valleys. The locals, called Rathians, did not welcome strangers easily. He had seen one from a distance before, tall, graceful, with patterns like faint silver lines on their skin. They moved with a stillness that made them seem part of the land. After 2 hours of climbing and searching, Elias spotted movement on the next ridge. A figure was kneeling among the rocks, hands moving carefully as if picking something delicate. He moved closer, boots crunching on loose gravel. The figure turned. It was a young woman, Rathian by the looks of her, tall, with deep green eyes and hair the color of dark copper. Thin lines of silver traced across her cheekbones and down her neck, catching the weak sunlight. She wore a cloak made from tough woven fibers, its edges frayed from use. In her hands, she held a small crystal, no larger than a coin, glowing, faintly, from within. They stared at each other for a long moment. Elias raised a hand in greeting. "Hello?" he called out. She did not answer. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing his presence. Then she looked back at the crystals on the ground, picking another and placing it in a small pouch. Elias walked closer, stopping a few steps away. "I'm not here to bother you. My shuttle's damaged. I'm looking for parts." Still nothing. She kept working, though her movements slowed, as if she was listening. He pointed toward her pouch. "Those crystals. Are they for trade?" Her head tilted. Then, in a soft voice, she spoke in accented standard. "Trade?" Elias smiled faintly. "Yes. I have food packs, tools. Maybe we can help each other." She studied him for several seconds, then nodded once. From her pouch, she pulled one crystal and held it out. Elias reached into his bag, took out a wrapped ration bar, and offered it in return. She accepted it carefully, turning it over in her hands before tucking it into her cloak. "I'm Elias," he said. "Sa'il," she replied. The name was short, musical. They stood there, a strange silence between them, broken only by the sound of the wind. Sa'il crouched again, gesturing for him to follow. Together they moved along the ridge where clusters of the small crystals grew between cracks in the stone. Elias picked one up and examined it. "These have some kind of energy," he said aloud. "Could be useful for my shuttle." Sa'il glanced at him but didn't comment. Instead, she showed him the safe way to loosen the crystal without breaking it. He followed her method, careful and slow. As they worked, he noticed something. Every time he spoke, even simple words, she would pause, listening with unusual focus. Her head tilted slightly, like someone trying to catch an unfamiliar melody. When they had gathered a small pile, Sa'il motioned toward a sheltered hollow in the rocks. Inside, she laid out her pouch, sorting the crystals by size and glow. Elias set his bag down and joined her. He offered her a small multi-tool. "For your crystals. Might make the work easier." She took it, testing the blade and the small prongs. Her fingers were precise, almost delicate, as she tried it on a stubborn crystal. It came free with a clean snap, and for the first time, she smiled. Just a small curve of the lips, but enough to show it mattered. "You are Far from your place, she said slowly. Yeah, Elias answered. Storm took my systems down. Without repairs, I'm not going anywhere. She nodded as if she understood more than she spoke. Then she handed him 3 crystals, brighter than the rest. For your flying machine. He accepted them with a grateful nod. Thanks, love. The words left his mouth without thought. Just a habit, something he might say to anyone who had done him a favor. But the moment they reached her ears, she froze. Her hand stopped halfway to her pouch. She looked at him, eyes wide, her expression unreadable. The wind seemed to hush for a moment. What is that word? She asked. Elias blinked. What word? Love. She said it carefully, as if tasting a strange fruit. Oh, it's a human word. Means you care about someone. Deeply. Her gaze didn't leave his. You use it for me? Elias shrugged lightly, not wanting to make it awkward. It's just a way of speaking where I'm from. A friendly thing. No big deal. But she didn't move for several seconds. Then, without another word, she tucked the multi-tool into her pouch and stood. We meet again, she said quietly, and walked away along the ridge, her cloak fluttering in the wind. Elias watched her go, a strange feeling curling in his chest. He wasn't sure if he had made a new friend or stepped into something far more complicated. Above them, the storm clouds shifted, and the faint glow of the planet's twin moons began to show through. The next morning, the sky over Ratha 9 was heavy with gray clouds. The wind had quieted, but the air still carried the taste of dust. Elias sat outside his shuttle, checking the damage again. The power relays were burned, and 2 stabilizers were bent out of shape. Without new parts, the ship wasn't going anywhere. He kept thinking about Sail, the way she had frozen when he'd said that simple word, love. He had used it without meaning much by it, but her reaction had been strange, almost like he had spoken a forbidden name. Elias shook the thought away and got back to work. He needed to focus. But before long, he noticed a shadow moving at the edge of the ridge. He looked up, and there she was, Sail, standing just far enough away to see him, her cloak pulled tight around her shoulders. You came back, he called. She walked closer, slow and careful, until she was standing a few steps from him. In her hands, she carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She set it on a rock between them and unwrapped it. Inside were more crystals and something else, a thin piece of metal with smooth edges, the kind used in old ship wiring. For repairs, she said simply. Elias smiled. That's perfect. You're a lifesaver. She looked at him sharply, almost like she was checking to see if he would say that word again. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he crouched beside the bundle and picked up one of the crystals. These will help with my power system. Where do you find so many? Ridge to the east, she replied. Dangerous. Rocks can fall. Yet you still go there? I go where I must, she said, her voice calm. They worked together for a while, Elias sorting parts, Sail showing him which crystals were strongest. At one point, she asked quietly, the word you said yesterday. What does it mean, truly? Elias set down the crystal in his hand. Love? Well, it's hard to explain. It's when you feel close to someone, care for them deeply, maybe even more than yourself. It can be for family, friends, or someone special. Sail's eyes narrowed slightly like she was studying him. You have many words for feelings? Yeah. Humans. We talk about feelings a lot. Maybe too much. He smiled faintly. She didn't smile back. Instead, she turned her gaze to the horizon. My people do not have that word. No word for love? Elias asked, surprised. No, we have words for loyalty, for duty, for respect. We have words for debt and for honor. But we do not speak of caring without reason. That's different, Elias said carefully. Sale's voice dropped lower. Long ago, before the Great Pact, my people had something like your word, but it was broken. We lost much because of it. What happened? She hesitated, then shook her head. Stories for another time. They returned to work, but Elias could feel the weight of her thoughts. She seemed distracted, her hands moving slower than before. Twice, he caught her glancing at him like she wanted to say more, but couldn't. When they finished, she stood and wrapped her cloak around her. I must go before the Watchers pass, she said. Watchers? Elias asked. Sael looked uneasy. They see everything. Strangers and locals. Not meant to speak for long. Why not? It is the law. The pact keeps us apart. Elias frowned. Seems like a lonely way to live. She didn't answer, only stepped back toward the ridge path. But before she left, she paused. Say it again. What? The word. Elias blinked. Love? She closed her eyes when she heard it, as if the sound alone carried some kind of warmth. Strange word, she whispered. Feels dangerous. Then she turned and disappeared into the thin mist drifting across the rocks. That night, Elias sat in the dim light of the shuttle's emergency lamps. The crystals Sale had brought were laid out in front of him, glowing faintly. He fitted one into a damaged circuit and watched it pulse with steady energy. But his thoughts weren't on repairs. They were on her reaction. Why would a simple word mean so much? Why hide it like it was dangerous? The next day, Elias decided to look for her. He followed the eastern ridge she had mentioned. The path was narrow with steep drops on either side. Twice, he had to grab jagged rocks to keep from slipping. After nearly an hour, he found her. She was crouched near a cluster of glowing crystals, working with the multi-tool he had given her. You're early, she said without looking up. I needed more crystals, Elias replied, then added, and maybe answers. She stopped working. About the word? Yeah. Sael leaned back on her heels. My people believe strong feelings between outsiders and us bring danger. Long ago, our world nearly burned because we trusted too much. The pact was made to stop it from happening again. We follow it. Always. But you're talking to me, Elias pointed out. Her eyes met his. That is why it feels dangerous. They gathered crystals in silence after that. At one point, Sael slipped slightly on loose stone, and Elias reached out to steady her. She didn't pull away, but her eyes flickered with the same strange look she had given him the day before. When they returned to the safer ground near his shuttle, she handed him her share of the crystals. We should meet less often, she said. Elias frowned. Do you want that? Sael hesitated. No. He gave her a small smile. Then maybe we don't have to. She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing the risk. Finally, she said, next time bring another human word. I want to know them. And before he could answer, she was gone again, leaving Elias with his crystals, his half-repaired shuttle, and a word that seemed to mean far more to her than it ever had to him. The days on Wrath 9 began to blend together, gray skies, cold winds, and the endless sound of dust against rock. Elias kept working on his shuttle, but the repairs were slow. Each missing part meant another trip into the ridges, and each trip brought the chance of seeing Sail again. She never said exactly when she would appear, yet somehow she always did. Sometimes she brought crystals, sometimes scraps of old machinery. Once, she even brought a small container of thick, sweet liquid, made from local fruit. Elias shared his own food packs in return, but the word, love, still lingered between them, unspoken most of the time, yet never far from their thoughts. Elias noticed how Sale's eyes would sharpen whenever he mentioned feelings, trust, or friendship. It was as if those ideas were heavy stones she carried, but never set down. One afternoon, the wind had calmed, and the pale light of Rathanine's twin moons gave the rocks a silver glow. Elias found Sael waiting for him near a narrow pass, sitting on a flat stone. "You wanted another human word," he said as he approached. She tilted her head. "Yes," he thought for a moment. "Hope," she repeated it slowly. "Hope. What does it mean?" "It's when you believe something good can happen, even if it's far away or difficult. It's like light in the dark." Her expression changed slightly, soft but uncertain. "We do not have that either. We have plans, goals, but not hope." Elias sat across from her. "Why? I mean, why don't you have words for these things?" Sael's gaze dropped to the ground. For a long time she was silent, as if deciding whether to speak. Finally she said, "I will tell you a story, but if I tell it, you must not speak of it to others." "I promise," Elias said. She took a slow breath. "Long ago, before the Great Pact, my people were many tribes. We traded with outsiders, humans, other worlds, other races. We built alliances. Some outsiders came with gifts, others with skills, and some came with feelings. They spoke of caring without payment, of joining lives without agreement. Many of my people believed them. They called this bond something close to your love." Her voice lowered. "It made us trust too much. We stopped guarding our borders. We let others take more than they gave. And when the shortages came, the outsiders left us behind. Entire valleys starved. The tribes fought among themselves. It was a time of betrayal and loss." Elias listened quietly, the wind brushing across the ridge. "After that," Sale continued, "the surviving leaders made the pact. We would never again mix lives with outsiders. Trade was allowed, but bonds of the heart were forbidden. Words for them were removed from our speech. We would build our future only with our own kind, safe from the weakness that feelings bring." Elias frowned. "So you believe caring makes you weak?" Her eyes met his sharply. "Not me. The pact believes it. I follow it because I must. But you're still here, talking to me." She didn't answer right away. "Because the word you spoke, love, it made me remember the old songs. My grandmother sang them when no one was listening. They spoke of a time when bonds were not a trap, but a strength." Elias leaned forward. "So part of you still wonders if the pact is wrong." Her mouth tightened. "Wondering can be dangerous." They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of distant rockfalls echoing through the ridges. Elias thought about her story. He could understand the fear. Trusting the wrong people could destroy a world. But to cut away the words for hope and love entirely, that felt like cutting away part of life itself. Finally, Sale stood. "We should move. Watchers pass this way at night." They walked together along the narrow pass. The moons lit their path in cold silver. Elias carried the bundle of crystals. They had collected while Sale moved ahead, her cloak whispering over the stone. At one point she stopped and looked back. "Do you have other words like love and hope?" "Plenty," Elias said with a small smile. "But they might be even more dangerous." "Then tell me one," she said. He thought for a moment. "Home." Sael repeated it slowly. "Home. We have a word for place of living. But this is different?" "Yeah. Home isn't just where you live. It's where you feel safe, where you belong." Her eyes softened at the explanation, but she didn't reply. Instead, she turned, and kept walking, her steps quiet over the stone. When they reached the ridge near Elias's shuttle, Sail paused. "You keep giving me these words. I do not know what to do with them." "Maybe just keep them," Elias said. "Words are like seeds. You never know when they'll grow." Sail considered that, then gave a small nod. "I will keep them. But you should be careful," Elias warned. "The Pact's watchers do not like seeds." With that, she stepped back into the mist and was gone. Elias stood there for a long time, holding the bundle of crystals. He felt the cold air against his face, the weight of her story in his mind. He now understood why she had reacted so strongly to a simple word. And he also understood something else. Every time they met, the risk grew higher, for both of them. But as he looked at the glowing crystals in his hand, he found himself smiling faintly. Because even on a harsh, lonely world, like Wrath 9, a seed had already been planted. The next few days were uneasy. Elias kept working on his shuttle, but every time he stepped outside, he felt a faint pressure in the air, like eyes watching from somewhere in the ridges. Sail's visits became less frequent. When she did appear, she kept glancing over her shoulder, her cloak hood pulled low over her face. The easy stillness she once had was gone, replaced by quick, careful movements. One evening, she arrived carrying only a single crystal. "We must not meet here again," she said quietly. Elias frowned. "Why not?" "The Watchers are near," she replied. "They have drones scanning the ridges. They look for any sign of pact breaking." "Because of me?" Her gaze flickered. "Because of us." She didn't explain more, but Elias could feel the tension in her voice. He had heard about the Watchers before, part of the Pact's enforcement, always watching for anyone breaking. The old rules. The story said they had the authority to take people away for re-education, though no one outside the Pact knew exactly what that meant. He tried to keep the mood light. "Maybe they're just curious about what we're doing." Sail didn't smile. Curious leads to questions. Questions lead to punishment. Before Elias could answer, a faint buzzing sound drifted through the air. Sael stiffened. From behind a ridge, a small black drone floated into view, its round body covered in dark plates, a red sensor light sweeping across the ground. She grabbed his arm and pulled him into the shadow of a rock outcrop. The drone moved slowly, scanning every surface. Elias held his breath, the crystal still in his hand. After a tense moment, it drifted away, disappearing into the mist. Sail didn't let go until the sound faded completely. "You see? They search." Elias nodded. "All right. No more meeting here." "Where then?" She hesitated, then said, "There's a cave, far from the ridges. The Watchers do not go there. It is said to be cursed. We can meet there." "Cursed?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "A story to keep children away. But it keeps the Watchers away too," she said. The next night, Elias followed her directions. The cave was hidden in a narrow valley, its entrance marked by twisted rock shapes that looked almost like faces. Inside, the air was still and cool. Faint light from glowing moss lit the walls in pale green. Sael was already there, sitting on a flat stone. "You came," she said, her voice echoing softly. "I'm not about to let a few Watchers scare me," Elias said, settling beside her. "Besides, I still need parts." She handed him a small metal coil. "Found this in the wreck of an old transport. It should help." Elias turned it over in his hands, impressed. "You risked a lot to get this, didn't you?" She looked away. "Risk is different now. After you gave me those words, love, hope, home, it is harder to see the pact as truth." He studied her for a moment. "Do you want to stop following it?" Sael didn't answer right away. "I don't know. My people believe it keeps us safe, but safety feels smaller now, like a cage." Before Elias could respond, the faint buzzing sound returned, this time sharper, closer. Sail's eyes widened. "They should not come here," she whispered. They moved quickly to the side of the cave, hiding behind a tall slab of stone. A thin beam of red light swept across the cave entrance. Then a figure appeared. A watcher in a dark hooded cloak, face hidden behind a mask with glowing slits for eyes. The watcher stepped inside slowly, scanning the cave walls with a small handheld device. Elias could feel his heartbeat pounding in his ears. If they were caught together, he had no doubt the consequences would be bad. The watcher paused, tilting its head as if sensing something. Then, after a long moment, it turned and walked back, out into the valley. The buzzing of a drone followed, fading into the distance. Sael let out a slow breath. That was too close. Elias nodded. "They're looking for you." "For us," she corrected softly. They stayed in the cave until they were sure the watchers were gone. While they waited, Elias worked on fitting the coil she had brought into his shuttle's damaged system. The soft green glow of the moss lit Sael's face as she watched him work. "You still don't fear them," she said quietly. "I've been around worse," Elias replied. "But I don't want you getting hurt because of me." She looked at him for a long moment. "You already changed something in me. The words you gave me, they make me see the world differently. The Watchers can't take that away." Elias smiled faintly. "Words are harder to break than metal." When they finally left the cave, the night was cold, and the twin moons hung low. They walked side by side in silence until they reached the ridge that split their paths. Sael stopped there. "If we keep meeting, the Watchers will find us." Elias studied her expression. "And if we stop?" She hesitated. Then the words fade. "And I don't want them to fade." He gave a small nod. "Then we keep meeting. Carefully." Her eyes softened, but she didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her pouch and handed him one last crystal. This one larger, and brighter than any she had given before. "For your power core. It may get you flying again." Elias accepted it with a quiet, "Thank you, Sael." She started to walk away, but paused and looked back. "And Elias." "Say it again." He knew what she meant. "Love." Her lips curved into the faintest smile before she disappeared into the mist. Elias stood there a moment longer, the crystal warm in his palm. He didn't know if they could avoid the Watchers forever. But he did know one thing. Whatever danger was coming, it was already too late to turn back. The storm came back to Ratha 9 like a living thing. Rolling clouds, sharp winds, and the low, endless growl of thunder. Elias stood outside his shuttle, the rain mixing with dust to form thin streams along the rocks. The large crystal Sael had given him now sat in the power core. For the first time since the ion storm, the shuttle's systems hummed with steady energy. He should have felt relieved. But all he felt was a knot in his chest. Sael hadn't come in 2 days. No crystals, no words, no sign at all. Elias told himself she was just being careful, hiding from the Watchers. But in the quiet of the storm, he began to wonder if something worse had happened. That evening, as he checked the stabilizers, a shadow moved through the mist. Sael stepped into view, her hood pulled tight. She was breathing fast, like she had been running. "They know," she said simply. Elias froze. "The Watchers?" She nodded. "They have seen us together. They know I have brought you things. They came to my home today." His chest tightened. "What did they say?" "They gave me a choice. I stay here, keep the pact, and you leave alone. Or, if I try to follow you, I will be marked a traitor." Elias stared at her. "And what happens to traitors?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed fear. "They disappear." The storm rumbled overhead. Elias took a step closer. "You could stay. It's safer. you'd be alive. And the words? She asked. Love, hope, home. They would fade until I am like the others, silent, safe, empty. Elias swallowed. If you come with me, there's no guarantee we'll make it past the patrols. You'd be leaving your world forever. I know, she said softly. The wind tore through the ridge, pulling at their cloaks. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The next morning, the storm had eased enough for flight. Elias worked quickly, sealing the last hull plates and running power checks. Every sound of the wind felt like a drone's approach. He didn't know if sail would come. He told himself not to hope too much, but the truth was he couldn't stop himself. At midday, a dark figure appeared on the ridge. But it wasn't sail. It was a watcher. The black cloak rippled in the wind, the mask's glowing slits fixed on the shuttle. Behind the watcher, 2 drones hovered, their sensor lights sweeping the ground. The watcher's voice was flat and mechanical. Human, you will leave this world now. Alone. If the Raythian woman comes here, she will be taken. This is final. Elias kept his voice calm. She helped me survive. That matters. To you, the watcher said. Not to the pact. The drones moved closer, scanning the shuttle. Elias kept one hand near the ramp controls, ready to seal it. The watcher stood unmoving for a moment, then turned and disappeared into the mist. The drones followed. Elias exhaled slowly. His time was almost gone. The hours dragged by. The sky darkened again, the rain coming in short bursts. Elias kept checking the entrance to the ridge, his chest tightening each time he saw nothing but fog. Finally, as the first faint glow of the twin moons broke through the clouds, a figure ran toward the shuttle. Sile. She carried a small bundle under her arm. Her hair was damp, her cloak torn at the edge. She didn't slow until she reached him. They will be here soon, she said, breathless. The drones followed me for a time, but I lost them in the rocks. Elias looked at the bundle. What's that? My grandmother's songs. Written on old sheets. They speak of the time before the pact. I want to keep them alive. He opened the ramp. Then we go. Now, the shuttle's engines roared to life, the large crystal in the power core glowing brighter than ever. The stabilizers hummed, ready for liftoff. As Elias guided the ship onto the flat stretch of landing field, red sensor lights flashed in the air. Mist. 2 drones, speeding toward them. Behind them, dark shapes moved, watchers on the ridge. They'll try to disable the ship, Sael warned. Elias pushed the throttle. The shuttle lifted, engines straining against the heavy air. A burst of light shot from one of the drones, striking the hull with a sharp crack. Warning lights flashed on the control panel, but the ship kept climbing. The second drone darted forward, but Sail moved to the side panel, grabbing the manual turret controls. She fired twice. One shot went wide, the other caught the drone's sensor, sending it spinning into the rocks below. The ridge fell away beneath them. The storm clouds loomed above, and Elias steered straight into their cover. For a long moment, the only sound was the rumble of the engines and the faint hum of the power crystal. Sile sat back in the co-pilot seat, breathing hard. They will. Call me traitor now, she said quietly. Then you're in good company, Elias replied, managing a small smile. She looked out at the stars breaking through the thinning clouds. I don't know where we will go. Anywhere you want, he said. That's the thing about leaving. You get to choose. She turned to him, her eyes steady. Then I choose to keep the words. Elias nodded. And maybe add a few more. The shuttle broke through the last layer of cloud, revealing the vast stretch of space beyond. Ratha 9 was already fading behind them. Sail reached into her pouch, pulled out one of the bright crystals, and placed it on the console between them. A piece of home, she said. Elias glanced at her. and a start for whatever comes next. The stars stretched out like a silver sea. The shuttle glided between them, leaving Ratha 9 far behind. Elias sat in the pilot seat, the hum of the crystal core steady beneath his hands. Sile sat beside him, holding her small bundle of folded song sheets. Neither of them spoke for a long time. It wasn't silence of fear anymore. It was the quiet of people who were still trying to believe they were free. Elias finally broke it. "We're clear of their scanners. They can't follow us now." Sale looked out the window at the endless dark. "It feels strange. All my life, the sky was something you only looked at. Now, I'm inside it." "You'll get used to it," Elias said with a small smile. "First time I left my home, I couldn't stop staring either." The shuttle's navigation map blinked, showing a dozen possible routes. Some led toward busy trade stations, others toward unclaimed worlds. Elias tapped the console. "We have enough crystal power for 3 jumps. Where do you want to go first?" Sael didn't answer immediately. She opened her bundle and unfolded one of the old song sheets. The words were written in flowing curves, nothing like the blocky Pax script. She traced a finger over the symbols. "My grandmother said these songs were sung under open skies, around fires, when people still spoke freely. She told me they gave people courage." She looked at him. "Can courage travel through the stars?" Elias nodded. "If you carry it with you, it can go anywhere." She folded the sheet again and tucked it away. "Then I think I know where I want to go. Somewhere the Pact's voice doesn't reach. Somewhere I can teach the words without fear." They made their first jump hours later. The stars stretched into long white lines, then snapped back into a new sky, bluer, sharper, with a faint golden nebula glowing on the edge. Below, a small world turned slowly, its surface a mix of green forests and silver lakes. The scanners showed no Pact patrols, no watchers, no settlements. "It's quiet," Elias said. "Almost too quiet." "Perfect," Sile replied. They landed in a wide clearing near a lake. The air was clean and cool. Elias stepped out first, checking the surroundings, then waved her down. Sael walked slowly, as if every step was a promise to herself. At the water's edge, she crouched and touched the surface. "It's cold," she said softly. "And it moves freely." Elias sat beside her. "You thinking about staying here?" "For a time," she said. "Long enough to write down all the words I remember. Long enough to make sure I don't forget the sound of them." That night, they lit a small fire near the shuttle. The flames crackled, and the smell of the smoke curled upward into the stars. Sael sang, quiet at first, then stronger as the melody filled the clearing. Elias didn't understand the language, but he didn't need to. He could feel the weight of it, the history carried in each note. When she finished, she looked at him. "The Pact would call this dangerous. They say songs make people restless." "Good," Elias said. "Restless people change things." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time the Rathians learned to be restless again." They stayed on the lake world for 5 days. Elias repaired the shuttle's hull and recalibrated the core. Sael explored the forests, gathering small stones and leaves she had never seen before. Every evening, they sat by the fire, and she taught him one new word from her people's past. On the 6th morning, Elias woke to find her already outside, standing on a rock near the water. She was holding one of the crystals up to the sun. "I've been thinking," she said when he joined her. "The Watchers will keep searching Ratha 9. They will try to erase my name from the records, but if I can send these songs to others, if the word spread. The Pact can't silence them all." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You want to broadcast them?" She nodded. "Not in one place. Many places. Little pieces. A word here, A melody there, enough for people to wonder. He smiled slowly. That's a dangerous idea. I learned from the best, she replied. 2 jumps later, they reached a busy outer rim station. It was loud, full of traders, engineers, and travelers from dozens of worlds. Sael kept her hood up, but her eyes scanned everything. The colors, the smells, the sounds. They found a quiet corner in a repair bay where Elias connected a small transmitter to the station's open band channels. Sael loaded the first song, File, just her voice and the old melody, no words the pact could track easily. With a press of a button, it was out, drifting through the comm networks, ready to be picked up by ships, traders, and strangers who might hum it without knowing why. That's it, Elias said. The first seed. Sael looked at the console. It feels small. Small things grow, he said, especially if they're stubborn. Weeks passed. They moved from station to station, world to world. Each time, Sael left a song, a phrase, a fragment of a story. Sometimes they heard it again in unexpected places, a child singing in a marketplace, a mechanic tapping the rhythm on a hull plate. Elias watched her change. At first, she had carried her fear like a cloak. Now, she carried her purpose instead. One evening aboard the shuttle, she turned to him. Do you ever think we'll go back to Ratha 9? He thought for a moment. Maybe not us. But the words might. She nodded. Then the words will arrive before we do. Months later, deep in the black between systems, the shuttle's long-range receiver caught a faint signal. Sael leaned over the console. A voice, Rathian but young, clear and unbroken, was singing one of her grandmother's songs. Sael closed her eyes, listening. When the song ended, she whispered, "It's begun." Elias looked at her. "So what do we do now?" She opened her eyes, her gaze steady. "We keep moving. We keep planting." He smiled. "Then let's see how far these words can travel." The shuttle turned toward the next jump point, the stars unfolding before them. Inside, 2 travelers carried a fire that no storm, no watcher, and no pact could put out. And somewhere across worlds, the first dangerous words were already taking root. This completes the 6-part HFY Sci-Fi story, ending with hope, purpose, and a sense that their fight for words and freedom has only just begun. If you want, I can now create a full outline of all 6 parts combined, so the entire story feels like one.